Welcome to the KU Food for Thought interview series. My name is Josh Stewart. I'm the Co-shibucho of the Toronto, Canada region. And I'm joined by...
I'm Jen. I am a Sandan in Koryu Uchinadi.
And we are joined today by Helen Sakamoto, the matriarch of KU in Canada. Welcome. For those who don't really know much about your background, could you explain your martial arts background and how you first got involved in KU?
So my name is Helen Sakamoto. I have been a student and a friend of Hanshi McCarthy since 1983. My martial art journey started in Hong Kong as a young child during the 70s in Taekwondo. And then after moving into Canada, I was enrolled in various Kung Fu school, mainly in Vancouver, Chinatown. And it was Hanshi McCarthy who gave me my very first karate lesson at the Vancouver Karate Center. The first time that I heard of Hanshi's name was at a West Coast Open tournament at the University of British Columbia. And at that time, he was competing in various categories against some of the finest North American competitors. It was after that tournament that I was so impressed by his skills that I have to visit his dojo to see what karate is all about. And I have to say that it was one of the best decisions I've ever made. And although we went our separate ways in 1986, I believe, when he moved to Japan, and then I moved to Toronto. We still kept in touch through the years, and we were so lucky in, I think, 1993, both my husband and I had the opportunity to visit him in Japan and met his family for the very first time. And after moving to Toronto, I continued my karate training, mainly in Shotokan, and received my 5th Dan. Eventually, in about 2002, I decided that Koryu Uchinadi is the path that I want to take. Mm-hmm. My introduction to KU happened probably around 1999, 2000, when Hanshi McCarthy was invited to Canada to do seminars. And they were hosted by Hanshi Sam Molesky. Mm-hmm. They were held in the Beaches Community Center. And a group of the seminar participants were really interested in practicing the drills that we learned in the seminars. And that actually began the idea of forming a Toronto KU study group.
So in terms of Sensei McCarthy's teaching in KU, you have an interesting perspective because you did train with him before he made the big pilgrimage over to Japan. And sort of before Koryu Uchinadi was invented, right? Before the 2-person drills and the concepts that we know had really been formulated. And then you had the chance to train with him again afterwards. How was the experience different between the first time you trained with him and then after KU? And could you sort of talk to us about what drew you back to Hanshi McCarthy's teachings the second time?
Oh, definitely. In many ways, the experience are very similar. Hanshi always fostered an environment of discipline. The physical conditioning and hard training ethics, they're always there. During my early training in karate, I concentrated solely very much on the physical ability to perform well in Kihon, Kata, and Kumite. After making the decision to go to KU, my focus has been shifted to functional application, of course, because the methodology of Koryu Uchinadi offers such an in-depth understanding of functional application through 2-person drills, Tegomis, drills on escape encounters, joint manipulations, balance displacement, ground fighting, choke and strangulation, even how to negotiate clinching and stuff like that, just to name a few. And of course, also kata and weaponry. My focus is no longer just the how to do techniques, but also why, to do such techniques. In my opinion, it really is a whole package. And for me personally, switching to KU from a WKF tournament style of training was a no-brainer. What drew me back to Hanshi's teaching was how he applies the HAPV-Theory to kata applications. That was the first thing that attracted me most. After learning so many katas through my life, for so many years, suddenly everything started to make sense. And KU made me realize that there is so much more to explore than just doing the techniques. And also I have to add that it was so refreshing to walk away from a very close-minded dojo environment to a very open-minded dojo environment. And Hanshi, from day one, when I stepped into the Vancouver Karate Training Center, I realized that the physical training is not the only portion of karate training. And the intellectual side is as important. I remember being extremely nervous at my yellow belt grading because someone told me that if I don't score 100% in the written exam, I'm not going to pass. So I was not sure, I'm really not sure if that person was pulling my leg or not, but that has engraved in my brain.
Yeah, written gradings at yellow belt. Wow, that's
Tough,
Yes.
tough gig.
Yes, we have study notes.
Quick question about, so you mentioned how there is, there's joint manipulation, shime. Of those lists of things, which one did you enjoy doing the most?
Oh God, okay. I can tell you which one I don't enjoy the most, because I don't like being thrown around a lot. So Nagewaza is probably my least favorite out of all of them. I love joint manipulations a lot. And also, of course, choke and strangulation. Like, who doesn't like those things, right? Yeah.
Everyone loves being choked.
Looks like a good strangulation in the afternoon.
Yeah.
You were one of the early supporters of KU in Canada, and really the one who got this movement started here. What were the early days of KU and the North American Gashuku like?
Well, the early days, at the beginning, several of us from the seminars started off training in my backyard and in my garage. Later on, with Hanshi's support, Brian and I decided to start a monthly Toronto KU study group, and we moved from our backyard to a training facility inside the dojo. At that time, our main focus was solely on Tegumi drills and going through the endless numam curriculum that was like takes forever. And I think at that time, Jaws started to come in too later on when we were doing that. Attendees came from various karate training styles, of course, and they see the value of bringing KU training to their dojo. And eventually, of course, some of them make the transition to KU, such as yourself. Mm-hmm. And when we're looking for facilities to host the very first North American Gashuku in year 2002, I believe, I introduced to Sensei Ron Shuket, who was at that time the Karate Ontario coach and a good friend of mine. Mm-hmm. He generally opened the dojo to our request without any hesitation. Of course, because our Gashuku was set up with 3 to 4 solid days of training, followed by an open seminar at the end, we basically took over his dojo for like 5 days in a row. So we have to work out a schedule that can give him, time to have his classes, and we would sneak in during daytime when no one was around. So it worked out really well. The first Gashuku, there were about 24 of us, and it was the hottest summer in Toronto ever in my experience that year. There was no conditioning inside the dojo. Luckily, we have some industrial fans blowing, but we were still dropping like flies every day. Hanshi basically just set out the expectation of what the Gashuku should be like and how it should be run. And there wasn't a day gone by that our gis were not soaked, okay? I have to tell you this story. It took us 45 minutes to learn how to line up properly. And you, you can ask other people who were there. They can testify to that. It was a painful experience, but at the same time, speaking for myself, it was also a very humble experience.
Yeah, the legacy of that lives on, because every year before the Gashuku, I always like talk to my senior students. I'm like, who's going this year? Do you know where you're lining up? Like, pay attention to that. No. Get it right before you go in on day one.
Yeah.
Know your place.
Yeah, exactly.
And another thing I have to add is, at the beginning, all the NU Gashuku were held in various cities throughout Canada and US. But then eventually Toronto seems to be the prime location for this event, thanks to you guys and Mike Coombs, of course, to carry on the torch. Really appreciate that. And something about Gashuku is that I have to emphasize is the pressure of meeting all the KU students across the world, not just North America, from Europe, from Australia. And it was the best thing ever that, to get a group of like-minded people together to train. So keep on going, people.
Absolutely. That's been the hardest part of this year, I think, is not having a Gashuku.
Yeah, it's true.
Yeah.
Well, blame it on COVID.
Yeah, exactly. Speaking of the original Gashukus, is there not a story about white belts?
Oh, yes. I have to add that. Because the first day, we were all wearing our own belts because majority of them were black belts already, right? So we enter our dojo with our KU crest on and our black belts. The next day, Hanshi came in with a white belt to make a statement. So we learned that we're not supposed to be wearing the color of the belt that we have earned from other style, since we are not accredited as a black belt in Koryu Uchinadi. Mm-hmm. So we were scrambling to find white belts. But of course, majority of people who came from out of town were asking, where can we buy a white belt? And luckily, the owner of the dojo, Sensei Ron, said, don't worry, I'll give you guys some white belts. So he was the one who were able to bring us some white belt. Some of them were, of course, not big enough for certain people. So I think it was, who was it? Someone actually taped two belts together to make it work for them. So that's the story of the white belt. Good lesson learned.
In terms of the KU curriculum and the practices embedded within KU, how do you see the relationship between the two-person flow drills, the Kata, and then the Riai Tegumi?
I think the practice of Riai Tegumi provides students an opportunity to put their skills to a test through an exchange of random attacks and escapes and counters, right? And it's like Pink Panther when suddenly it's a Kato that come out and attack you and grab you and you have to react. So for me, it actually feels like that. And Brian and I actually plays around a lot in that at home too. We would just jump on each other and and see what they would do to counter. When you are in the learning phase of two-person drills and learning kata applications, your partner is somewhat willingly comply to what the technique is applying to them, right? In Riai Tegumi, not only you are facing some level of resistance, but also the unexpected response from your training partner, which makes it fun, in my opinion. And the exercise also provides you a better understanding of how to fine-tune your 5 application principles: location, tools, angles, directions, intensity, to its maximum effectiveness. A lot of time you think you know the application, But if you're not in the same position, it does not work, right? And if people are resisting you, definitely it's going to be harder to make it work. Yeah. So Riai is a good testing ground for that. And through this exercise, I think each individual can identify what is most effective for them, and also learn what their weaknesses and strengths are. And by using that, you will improve your weakness, turn it into something positive for you to use. And for me, someone with a very small like stature, you know, I myself would definitely look for techniques that have predetermined responses, all the dirty stuff, in other words, and also apply techniques that doesn't require me to use a lot of power. You know, I definitely would not try to throw a 200-pound man over my shoulder. You know, I'll do something different. So it's definitely is a good learning ground to learn what works for you and what does not work for you.
Absolutely. And I'm also, I'm very glad to hear that I'm not the only one who has to open the fridge very carefully just to make sure no one's going to jump out.
So you have a Kato at home too?
I wore a really long thing.
Oh, no.
So I get over him and strangle him with it.
I'm sure you guys do the same thing.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, all the time.
Yeah, exactly. So
well,
there you go. That's the home version of Riai Tegumi.
Absolutely, yeah.
Yeah.
Well, Sensei Helen, thank you very much for your time, of course, and for sharing your insights into KU. Obviously, you've had a huge influence on both of us in terms of our teaching and learning of KU, because we basically, you know, you mentioned the backyard training and all that stuff.
The basement training.
And the basement training, yeah. We have
yes.
We have very fond memories of those experiences for sure.
I think Brian did most of that.
Jen, any final words for Sensei Helen?
No, but
I miss you guys.
I miss you too. You're obviously a huge inspiration, particularly I think for female martial artists, because when I saw you do things, there was never any excuse for anyone in the room not to be able to do it. Like if someone's smaller than you, weighing less, not as strong, if she can apply to make it work, nobody has any excuses.
Yeah, you just have to find what works for you, as I said. You know.
Absolutely.
Well, it was nice to catch up with you a little bit. Thanks again for your time, and we'll talk soon.
Yeah, thank you, guys.
ready?
I'm ready.
Okay.
Brush your hair, Josh.
Well,
And you can have it too for the low, low price of $39.99.
yeah, we definitely got ourselves put to the test in the basement, in the backyard training and all that stuff. And there's video evidence of it too. So
That's true.
yeah,
Really? I don't
Yeah.
remember you guys filming.
not
Okay.
a lot, but yeah, definitely we have some footage from back then. So it was lots of fun.
That's great.
Yeah.